In this video, I'm going to show you my process of making a ceramic travel tumbler that fits in a cup holder, from beginning all the way to the end.
Okay, so I'm in my car and I'm just gonna measure my cup holder. I'm gonna measure the bottom diameter, the height, and the top diameter. I'm doing both diameters because sometimes the cup holders can taper a little bit, so just something to account for. I have a ruler and I also have a divider to help me measure the bottom diameter accurately. If you don't have one of these, you can use one of these. Or you can take a piece of string or floss and pinch it down there and then measure it on your ruler. Also, I'm pretty sure that there's like a universal cup holder size, but I'm just gonna measure mine just in case. Bottom diameter is 3 inches. The height is 2.75 inches. And my top diameter is 3.25 inches. So now we're just gonna do some math. So now that I have my cup holder dimensions, I need to figure out my throne dimensions because clay shrinks. And the first thing I need to know is my clay shrink rate. And my clay shrink rate is 13%. If you don't know your clay shrink rate, you can ask your supplier. I found mine on my supplier's website. To figure out these other dimensions, I'm going to Google Omni Clay Shrink Rate Calculator. And I'm gonna use this one right here. Here's what it looks like. And where it says clay shrinkage, I'm gonna add in my 13%. Because we're figuring out our throne dimensions to fit into our cup holder, I'm gonna scroll down here where it says final dimensions and input my cup holder dimensions right here. So my top diameter was 3.25 inches. And then I'm gonna scroll up and it's gonna give me about 3.7 inches. Because I want the cup to actually fit in the cup holder, and because I like a thicker glaze, I'm actually gonna round this number down to about like 3.5 inches. Then I'm gonna scroll down again for the height and input 2.75 inches. I'm gonna scroll up and it's gonna give me a height of 3.2. So let's say my hand is the cup holder and this is the travel tumbler. I don't mind this height being a little bit taller than the cup holder itself. So I'm actually gonna round up to about 3.5 inches for this. And then bottom diameter was 3 inches. Scroll back up again, and it's gonna give me a width of 3.45 inches. Again, because I want this to actually fit in the cup holder and I like a thicker glaze, I'm gonna round this down to about 3.25 inches. I like keeping my numbers pretty simple. All my dimensions will be listed below, as well as it will be in millimeters. So now that I have my throne dimensions, I'm going to show you how I apply this on the wheel.
Here are the tools I'll be using. I'll be using 1 pound and 12 ounces of clay, or 794 grams of clay. Before I begin to throw, I'm going to set my dividers to my calculated top diameter, which was 3.5 inches. Then I can finally begin throwing by coning and centering a few times. Because I'm making a narrow cylinder, I like making this puck to at most 4 inches. Now this step, opening, is the most important step in the whole process. This step ensures that by the time I'm done throwing, the tumbler will be close to my calculated bottom diameter. So my calculated bottom diameter is 3.25 inches, so I'm going to open this up to about 2.75 inches. I got this number by subtracting 0.5 from my calculated bottom diameter. Once I'm done pulling and shaping my walls, the bottom diameter should roughly be around 3.25 inches. Then I'm going to make a 7-inch cylinder. I chose 7 inches because I like the visual ratio of the bottom height to the top height. You can see what this looks like once it's all done. This one, the top height is a little bit shorter. If you like this look, then make your cylinder shorter. The overall cylinder height is where you can adjust this ratio. Once my cylinder reaches 7 inches, I'm going to make a line at my calculated height of 3.5 inches. Then I'm going to take my sponge and roughly strain everything out to get a general shape of what I'm going for. Once I hit that line, that's where I'm going to slowly move the clay out, like this. I'll use my pointer finger with my inside hand, and with my outside hand, push the clay into it. Now, with my metal rib, I'll strain out the bottom section, and then the top section. I'm going to redefine this line and make some small tweaks here and there. I'm going to take my dividers that I set in the beginning and measure that top diameter. It was just a little bit too wide, but it's okay because I'm going to be trimming this later. This is how I measure my bottom diameter. I'm going to take some slip on my hands, use both my pointer and thumbs to make two L's that are parallel to each other, line them up at the base of the piece, and drag them towards me. And I'll measure the gap between these lines that I just made. Again, it's a bit wide, but I'm going to trim these down. It's just really important to measure how much I'm opening up the piece in the beginning. I'll wire it off, set aside, and cover to dry. If you guys have any questions while making this, I just made a free pottery community. We can share each other's progress, share what we're all working on, and I can even answer any questions you may have about making this tumbler. A community of potters for potters. The link is down below. Here are the tools I'll be using for trimming and stamping. Because I add a stamp on the side of my piece, I like trimming right before it becomes leather hard, or I can feel there's just a bit more water in the clay. If I wait till it's too dry, I can't get a deep imprint or it just messes up, like this one. I begin trimming by taking clay off the top. Here I'm trimming the lip portion so that it's a bit more rounded and drinking out of the tumbler isn't too sharp. I'll take off clay on the bottom, trim that little edge, and round out the base a bit. Then I'll add my foot. To stamp, I'm going to make a little pillow by folding a towel that will prop up the piece. With my ruler, I'm going to make a line where I want my stamp or logo to go, and for me that's at 15 millimeters. I'm going to take a glass cup that I had in my kitchen or something that's rigid that can fit into my tumbler. As I'm stamping with one hand, the other hand is going to firmly hold the cup flush onto the side that the stamp will be on. I'll line my stamp up to the line that I just made and very slowly stamp my piece, making sure I can feel that glass on the other side when I press down. I like to get in real close and push the stamp down in sections. I'll push down the top, right side, left side, and bottom before I remove the stamp. My rim was a little smushed, so I used the glass cup to make it round again. I also have this 3D printed rim rounder that I got off of Etsy that I use sometimes too. And here's what the inside looks like after stamping. This is when I stamp the bottom of my piece, but I'll make a whole dedicated video to this later. Here are the tools I'll be using to attach the mouthpiece. I start off with 6 ounces of clay or 169 grams of clay. I'll do a rough flatten, and then I'll take my 2 sticks that are 1/4 inch thick and lay them parallel to each other. With my rolling pin, I'll flatten the clay out. With my tumbler that I just trimmed, I'm going to use it to stamp out 2 mouthpieces. I like making 2 just in case one breaks. Then I leave this to dry on the plasterboard, and every 30 minutes or so, I'll flip it to dry. Here's what that looks like. While I wait, I'm going to fill in my logo with some underglaze that I put in a squeeze bottle. The other squeeze bottle is filled with water so that when I'm done, I can wash out the underglaze from the tip. Otherwise, the underglaze would dry it out and I wouldn't be able to use it. After I'm done, I make sure to wrap it up while I wait for the mouthpiece to dry out. Now, here's how dry I aim my mouthpiece to be before I attach it on my tumbler. Here's the scale, 1 being clay straight from the bag and 10 being bone dry. For 1, when I shake it, it flops. When I break it in half, it tears. For 10, bone dry, it's super rigid and cracks in half when I break it. Here's what a dryness of 3 looks like, which has been drying for about an hour. It doesn't really hold its shape when I shake it. It's a little too bendy and it tears when it breaks. Here's what a 7 looks like, very rigid, holding its shape and cracks when I break it. I aim for a dryness of 5 or 6. It holds its shape when I shake it, takes some force to bend it, and it breaks slowly. This for me in my environment, humidity, takes around 3 hours with flipping it every 30 minutes on a plasterboard. Once the clay is at a proper dryness level, I'll cut it out. For consistency, I like to make this 30 millimeters tall. And I like to round out these edges a bit so it's not too sharp. This is a 3D printed mouthpiece cutter I made. If you want the STL file so you can print it out yourself, it is linked below. On the left is what the cutter looks like, and the right is what using a water bottle looks like. You can totally just cut it out with a needle tool too. So I'll take the piece and line up the hole to center with the logo. Then I'll add lines on the tumbler where the edges are. These lines will help tell me where to score. I'll score the tumbler between these lines and score the mouthpiece. I'll add some water and add the piece into the tumbler. I'll set it aside to let it fuse and dry a bit while I take some fresh clay and make some thin coils. I'll add the coils on the piece and blend it in. making extra sure to smooth out the joints. These joints are very susceptible to cracking, so I take extra time with the joints. Then I'll clean up all the lines with a sponge. I like taking one of the sticks that I use to flatten the clay and use it to strain out the top or remove any excess clay from the coils. Here I'm just tightening up any rough edges. I just wanted to show you guys how unneat it can be once I attach the mouthpiece. To clean it up, I just add some water, get my finger in there, and neaten the seam a bit. Here it is, a bit cleaner now. I wrap up my piece and let it dry very slowly. I like drying mine upside down because gravity can make the mouthpiece want to tear away from the tumbler and can result in some cracks if I have it standing right up. I keep this wrapped for at least 7 days before I slowly introduce it to air. Then I'll spend another 7 days slowly introducing it to air. Here is what it looks like once it's bone dry, and now we can move on to the next step. The pieces go into their first fire, a bisque fire. Here's what the pieces look like after. Nothing too dramatic of a change other than it is a lot more durable and porous, ready to absorb some glaze. Here are the tools I'll be using for glazing. Before I get started, I like to put my hair up and wash my hands to free it from any oils or nasties that might affect my glaze. Then I'll take the time to sponge away any excess dust. On the wheel is where I'll wax my piece. I'm making sure I get the wax deep anywhere I've stamped so that glaze doesn't get into it. Then I'm going to take some liquid latex and squeeze it into my logo so glaze doesn't get into it. And I'll set it aside to dry. Here I'm prepping my work table with some newspaper before I finally get to glaze. This is zinc-free clear glaze that I dip my piece into once. After a few hours, I remove the liquid latex from the logo. I'll add in glaze where it's missing. Here, I'm scratching the glaze around the logo to thin it out. When the piece is in the kiln, the glaze can melt and pool into the logo. Then I'll clean up the bottom to free it from any excess glaze. After that, it's ready for the kiln.
Boom.
Here are the pieces after. The last step in this is to sand the bottoms to make sure they're nice and smooth. This one had a little glazed dot that was easily sanded away. And now it's time for its final test.
Alright, so we're back in the car and I'm just gonna see if this guy fits or not. Nice, it does.
Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.